Yeah. Well, Julia had a great point. She was talking about, because we talked about it too, is there a ticketing system where you open and you have an open question that has been closed by whoever has taken care of it, so that we know that questions aren't just sitting out there somewhere. And that is additional cost, because you're going to need some type of ticketing type system where it comes into this phone line or text, and then whoever's answered it has to put, yep, here's how I handled this, here's the answer I gave, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And someone no, go ahead, Tanika.
But I was going to say that's one of the reasons why I think our speaking with tech services is important, because Help Desk obviously has a system like that already set up. But even with one of the resources that we currently use, we could probably adapt it so that we could use it in that way. So the text system that we just transitioned to, SMS Global, all of the text messages come into, we can have them forwarded to an email box. And so if we have multiple staff members who have access to that email box and there's some sort of notation system, whether it's flagged or whatever, we could probably refashion it so that it serves that purpose if IT doesn't have a cost-effective.
Wait, what are you saying? Are you saying that there is a potential opportunity, let's say a question comes in about technology access, that it can keyword that to an email, to a tech email for them to answer?
Yeah, so if we set up keywords, so if there are different keywords, if you have a technology question, text computers to this number, then we would have all of those text messages forwarded to a designated staff member or department or catch-all email. So then if all of those text messages or emails are going to technology, then they would follow up on them.
Now that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that would be incredibly cool. but I'm a little wondering about the multiple languages we deal with and the speed with which we could address that. And is it universal enough, simple enough and universal enough? I mean, I guess I'm thinking if we don't want to be so sophisticated that we inadvertently make it inaccessible to some people. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And so the tech system that that our department transferred to in terms of communicating with parents is, it can support multiple languages, which wasn't the case in the past. It only supported English, Spanish, but now it supports all of our Amharic and Arabic and Dari characters. And, our parent liaisons, the division-wide parent liaisons, they've had great success with texting families. So many of our families are comfortable with texting. So I think, I'm probably over-explaining it, but it is a pretty seamless system in terms of text this number if you have a question, and it's just as they're accustomed to communicating by text.
Yeah, that was mostly what I was thinking about, is you see it in English and Spanish, but you don't see the other languages very often. So that's cool.
Yeah, that was something that we had to remedy over the beginning of closure.
Well, and it sounds like we have something that may be in place a little bit, but we would need to expand it, and we need to make sure it's not overwhelmed. I think that particularly initially, there's going to be a lot of input coming in and questions coming in. We need to be responsive to.
We're going to need somebody from each department, really,
to direct it to and then direct it back.
I need to stop a conversation for a second. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but Testify is hanging out in the universe. I keep telling him to come through because he wanted to be in this room, and keep reassigning him, but he's not accepting it. So he's still hanging out there, and so I don't know what else to do.
I'll text him.
He left the room and without telling me, and then that's why they switched me over to the other room. And now he's like, it says he's not joined, but I keep putting him in this room, and he's not joining. So I don't know what else.
He's in ACPS purgatory out there.
He is. So I don't know what else to do. I'm like, I've done it. He's just either not doing something. So I just wanted to let you know.
Tanika's texting him, so hopefully he'll.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt the conversation.
There's going to have to be a commitment from multiple departments as we put this together, to have some type of representative that can handle questions coming in specifically to their department. And that's
Approved
gonna be,
person.
yeah, that's gonna be another type of sell point, is how do we make sure that all these departments in these areas are ready to roll when questions come in, and in this ticketing system or whatever we put in for texting and or phone calls, how, you know, we just have to make sure, because that's going to be a potential sell point too to these departments, and maybe specific buildings. Each building will have a department or a person, right?
So you know, when Kurt and I talked about this a bit last week during our one-on-one, because we were trying to prepare for this meeting, and I think that was some of the stuff that came up from my experience with these kinds of things. So, you know, in Arlington, we had a system called IQ, and we had a specific email address called engage@APS. Okay. And so you could email that email address, and it would go into the system. And so the ticket wouldn't be closed until someone actually wrote back, or there was some evidence that it was closed. Of course, we don't have that, and we don't have time to put something like that in place, because it took us months to get that in place. But I think what was effective with that was that, you know, if stuff was hanging out there, like people, bosses would know. It's like, you didn't get back to the person, you know, because otherwise, what I worry about is we don't want to create a customer service nightmare for ourselves. You know, like then we forward it to so-and-so in this department, and then so-and-so in this department doesn't pick up the phone and or call the person back, and then we get the blame that the hotline is horrible, right? Because that happens all the time. So that to me is probably the biggest sticking point. The other piece was, because I felt like if I call Hammond and the phone, you know, the phone number goes to, let's say Tanika's the representative at Hammond that picks up the phone, or not, right? You leave a message for the person. Let's say that she picks up the phone, and we can equip them. I was saying to Kurt that maybe we give them like a sort of like a weekly update, things you need to know, questions that need to be answered, so that way they're always updated. And then a department person too, whoever was sort of, you know, the designated person would also get that update every week. And we could also send it to the principals. I mean, everybody can have it, but essentially the people that are really in charge of it. So I would expect that if Tanika picks up the phone and on the list of updates, the answer is not there, that then she would connect the person back to the hotline, so that the hotline could take care of that person. But that they would make sure that they connected them to a live person. Because what we don't want is people just being shuffled off, right? Because then that makes people feel upset. And so I think that, to me, that's probably the most critical piece, is that they're, for the most part, connected to a live person. Now, if we're doing a department person, we can't guarantee that, because the person may be sitting at their home desk or whatever and be able to pick up the phone or not. And that's where the tricky part is, because I feel like the hotline, we should always have somebody picking it up, right? But at the school, for the most part, they should always have somebody picking it up. But the department person may not be, and that's, we have to figure out a system. And I don't know if it's a logging system, an antiquated spreadsheet, you know, which, believe me, you know, I used to do that at APS with our leadership team. Whenever school board correspondence came in, I used to keep a spreadsheet, which is annoying, but you know, you sort of, then you cross it off as it comes along. But we would have to have somebody that's logging that information to say, I sent it to Tanika on July 20th, so and so on and so forth. So, you know, we might have to just get over the fact that it's antiquated, but I also want to make sure that we don't have people sort of not being responded to, or wait for us to know who it was that we sent it to and that they didn't respond, so we can get back to them. So Shannon has a question.
I'm sorry, Julia, can you see if Testify is in a waiting room?
I sent him again. I'm not, for some reason, I don't know why he's not getting it.
Oh, he said now he's waiting for the host to let him in. That's what his screen says.
Janet, you did have a question?
I'm sorry.
Let me see. I'll have to figure out how to do that, because I'm not
Janet,
able
you're
to.
on mute. Janet, you're on
You're
mute.
on
I'm
mute.
sorry. So yeah, I actually had two thoughts. The first was sort of what behavior do we want to encourage? So, you know, do we want the home schools to be the first the standard answers, the standardized answers? And, you know, how I think that's a really good idea. Is like, you know, can we standardize those answers? So if you have a question about getting a replacement laptop, you know, or whatever, Chromebook, where do you go? And what behavior do we want to drive? Do we want to drive that to the homeschool, or do we want to drive it to a hotline and distribute it back out? So, I mean, as a parent, it seems to me that we want to encourage the commitment to the homeschool relationship.
I agree.
Because, yeah.
I agree
Yeah,
because I think in a traditional year, if someone has a question and my son goes to Lyle's Craft, we call them Lyle's Craft. And then if they don't have the answer, Lyle's Craft says, you know what, this is a technology-based question I just don't have the answer for. I'm going to connect you or get you the answer, either way. So I think there needs to be some type of consistency there too. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I fully agree too. I think that we should be standing up the homeschools as the primary outreach, but then maybe if the schools are overwhelmed with calls, if you can't get through, try the hotline.
Yeah.
Or
Exactly.
if it's out of school hours, because our folks usually work until, our department usually works until 5 or 6. So if people are calling after school hours, then they can try the hotline if they want more of an immediate response, but that our school-based staff should be equipped to answer all the questions that.
And then the question is kind of who standardizes the answers, if you will, who collects the standardized answers, to Julia's point about can you get the correct answers in the hands of the school staff.
Right. And I think Helen's office has been doing a good job of that in terms of the FAQs, all the FAQs that have been collected and posted online and shared out in various ways. When our department stood up the ACPS meals hotline, when closure first began, like we established an FAQ with school and nutrition services, and we kept that updated so that our parent liaisons who were receiving calls on the bilingual information hotlines and our staff who was manning the text lines had all the answers to pretty much 95% of the questions that came in, unless they were complaints that parents had about food access during the closure. So
Yeah. I think too, depending on which model we go with and whatever the timeline is for doing that, there may be some staff availability beyond the administrative assistant, let's say, to be the responders or the answerers of the hotline calls or emails. In other words, one of the questions that just came up was, what are we going to do with support staff if we're doing total virtual? Well, if we're total virtual, the support staff can, shall we say, and please don't misunderstand this, earn their salary. Understand what I mean. I'm not saying they don't, but there is a specific job for them. And if you've got 5 instructional assistants that can be doing that, there is a better chance. I mean, you got to make the message consistent, but there's a better chance that nobody's going to get lost between the cracks. They're not going to fall between the cracks. They're not going to get a question answered in a timely fashion. What we want to avoid is the calls we've all had. I did one recently, I think it was to Comcast or Xfinity, whatever they're called, where, you know, it's push this button, push this button, push this button, put this button. And by the way, you're in our queue and your wait time is 30 minutes. And you got to avoid that. People don't like that and they don't have the time for that now. So the more people you can get answering the phones or responding to emails, the better too.
So in the 25 minutes we have left, and I think you're absolutely right, John, that's exactly what I want to avoid. I don't want people feeling like we're shuffling them off. But I think what we have to decide, so I think we all are in agreement that we should have, right? Everyone, yes? what does that look like? How much it costs? And you're right, John, that was one of the reasons why I wanted us to sort of get this tight. I want to make a proposal to HR and say, we need 20 people, we need 15 people, we need them for 10 hours a day, we need them for whatever, you know, whatever it looks like, or we need 2 people, you know, 3.5 hours each a day. So I think we need to really think about logistics for the next 25 minutes in terms of like how many people we need, how much we think it's going to cost. We need to use the language line. How does that work? And then, because I agree with you. I mean, it shouldn't all fall on the bilingual family liaisons. It can't do that. And furthermore, they don't start working towards the end of August, So we need to, if we need to open up the line August 7th, we need bodies August 7th, right? We need to think about that too. And I want to be able to make HR sooner than later. I can't see why we can't use people, but then we also need to think about what is it that we need to do to train them and prepare them and make them understand everything that we're concerned about, that they really need to be committed, you know, so that way people don't feel lost. And how do we support them to be prepared for that? So those are the things that I think we need to think about next. How do we make it all come to life and get the resources that we need to do it?
Well, and a big question in my mind, my original thinking with Hotline was a central type of location and it goes out this way. If we're talking about schools being the point of contact, is it, and I'm not saying, but I mean, then it would be the reverse of that. It would be everybody calls the school to which they are attached or in the attendance zone in which they live, and it goes this way instead of whatever. So I think that's a big decision.
Well, let me ask a scenario question. A parent calls in and has a question for, like we went through before, for Lyles Crouch, specifically to Lyles Crouch. In our system, if they call a main number, there would be then an automated, are we saying an automated that says click 1 for school specific question, click 2 for technology, click 3, and then you got to go through a phone tree system of, okay, they clicked 1 because it's school specific, click 1 for Lyles Crouch, click 2, and then it gets you down enough that you finally get somebody at Lyles Crouch after pushing a bunch of buttons, which is fine. It's just, hey, we got to Lyles Crouch, now I'm going to get a person. I just don't know. I don't know how that all works.
Yeah, leave a message. We'll call you back. Our lines are tied up right now. You can't.
Or do we have a live person all the time ready on that main number? When they call, we answer and say, hi, what's your question today? I'm going to connect you.
Yeah, I'm old school, and my belief, I hate it when I make a call and I get some automated system that multi-directs me spots. And I'm going to hate it even more if I've got a pressing question. That's when I'm trying to get my TV fixed. That has nothing to do with my kids and their life.
Yeah. So maybe another way to think about this would be to say, okay, our peak questions or our most complicated time of questions are going to be August 7th through, say, September 15th. Okay, that's when we're really going to be crazy. And so maybe another way to think about it is to say, you know, we're going to have a traditional phone center. You know, I mean, I'm not saying, I mean, it can be virtual, but we're just going to say that, okay, you know, we really have to be majorly staffed for 6 weeks. And we've got to figure out for 6 weeks, we want live answers. And we want a lot of incoming phone lines and we want manpower. And then after September 5th, well, I don't know if we're doing a delayed start or I don't know whatever, you know, 2 weeks after we two weeks after we open or whatever, you know, we say, okay, we merge into a different role. But you know what I'm saying? That maybe it's like, because our big questions are going to be August 7th through, say, like August 20th. But, you know, that's going to be insane. So I don't know. It's just another thought.
I also think about actually after, to tell you honestly, I think after school starts, we're probably going to get a lot of questions too. Like,
yeah, that's true.
Technology and, you know, back to school night, all those things that people are not 100% sure about and they want to be able to call. I mean, obviously if we're in a if we're in a hybrid model for whatever reason, transportation, you know, they'll call us as opposed to calling the transportation line because that's always really busy. And so I think that's why we're thinking that we actually probably will need a lot of support even after school starts. I mean, we had thought about it September 15th, but I think it depends. It depends on the like the opening that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think you have more, Julia, you made a good point. I think come August, whatever the date is, you've got more staff availability at the building level to possibly help support this, depending on what model we're in. Prior to that, your instructional assistants, your you've got a very, particularly at elementary schools, you've got a very limited staff. You've got a principal, maybe an assistant principal, and you've got a 3 administrative support people, and that's basically it. So we've got to take that into account.
So, so now we're at, I keep thinking about time. I thought we were gonna have more. So what do we need to do next? So I think, staffing, how many people, how much time? If we start on August 7th, you know.
The IT side that Tanika mentioned, I think that's a crucial first step. What capability do we have, and what do we need, and what is it going to cost?
Mm-hmm.
Correct. And actually, the other piece that, in addition to how many staff, I need to know how many phones. We're going to have to get these people cell phones, and so that are connected to the main number or whatever. So we definitely need to think about that as well. So I need to make that request, which is going to be, of course, a budget item. But you know, I think the families need a way to. I worry about, to John's point, people are going to automatically want to call the school, but I just don't know if that's going to be, they're going to be dealing with so many other things, and we need to support them in that, so that way they have a way, they have somewhere to send families that they're not having to deal with all this sort of like, well, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's crucial, one of the crucial messages that needs to go out is, if you have a question, even if it's school specific, you call this number. You don't, and you somehow nicely say you don't call the school. That's not going to prevent all of it, but that might direct some of it. But
So,
we need to come up with a list of questions that are, what are the questions that need to be answered right now? I mean, the IT questions, the staffing questions, things like that are the crucial.
And I see major departments. I mean, you could break it down to, if you look at our website, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 main departments at ACPS. That's just department wise. We're not talking building wise, but we're talking department wise. There's at least 8 listed areas of departments that could be a receiver and have a phone. Somebody is delegated to each one of those departments to answer phone calls. I don't know.
I'm going to say goodbye and give some love to the other groups, but I think you guys are in the good track, and we can talk again when we all get together.
So Tanika, I know you have experience, you've been dealing.
Test fine?
Yes, good morning, yes.
Yeah, I keep admitting you, but you're not accepting it. So I don't know what's going on.
I accepted, but it won't
I have
keep me waiting.
listened to you several times. It's not showing up on your screen?
No, it says on my end that the meeting host will let you in wait several times.
And I did, and I just did it again. So.
But now it works. I have to restart my machine just in case. I don't know what happened. But it works fine.
So, I mean, I keep letting you in, but for some reason it's not, I don't know what's going on. But I got to go to another breakout room now.
Okay, so this is the room that I'm going to wait for?
No, I've let you in. That's the thing. I don't know why you're not seeing it pop up on your screen. And I can't, it's not, let me move you back to breakout room 3.
Okay, thank you.
Do with creating a team, or like do schools have teams that work on family and community engagement? Do they have representatives that lead this already?
So it depends on the building. It depends on this principle, and that's why it has to be systemic, right? So if we are expecting that communication will be sent home to families in X manner, we have to make sure that everybody understands the expectation coming from them for those things to happen, right? So it's like a domino effect. So what families can expect from teachers, teachers need to know what families expect from them and where can they access those resources. That means they will need professional development, a go-to person, just the same way that someone needs to be accountable.
Yeah, I can just jump in there in terms of like specific school liaisons or family and community engagement. Like I'm a teacher, but I've also taken up like just the role of helping our administrators and our staff with engaging our community within the International Academy. And I think one of the things that like in our school, I don't think teachers have enough support in terms of being able to do those grassroots. And I think that's something that we could really improve on. I think it's important because at the end of the day, teachers are front line. Like I have a lot of families that contact us directly. And another thing, it comes down to the money. I'm glad Julia is on here because I know she talked about wanting to see like the costs. Because I'm helping in this role, but it's not a stipend position. I'm just doing it because I've been working with the Faith Center. I've been able to learn a lot from them. And I just have the desire to make sure that our families are being reached, but it's not a stipend position. So a lot of that extra work, and it requires training. But a lot of the teachers that I hear, they want to be able to connect with their families. They know it's so important, but they don't necessarily have the tools or resources to do it. I'm not sure about all schools, but I know at TC, I think it's something that I've been made aware of.
One thing that is very interesting is that you have a family and community, a family engagement position in TC that was just repurposed, and the person is there. But it is interesting that that we don't work very closely with that position.
Right.
So because of the way it was created.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting because you're saying that what I hear you say, you guys are not working with that person.
Well, the thing is, I mean, it's one person. She's stationed at Minnie Howard. We have close to 4,000 students. It's the same thing with College and Career Center. We have one College and Career Center. Our kids don't even want to go down there. They don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? Like we have to have more. Each academy almost has to have someone. And maybe it's giving stipends and training, a couple teachers or staff. And I think that's where the question of like, how do social workers, how are they involved in this as well? I don't know if there's been like a lot of overlap with that. I know they do outreach, go to families and connect with them as well, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. This is a great conversation.
I was just going to say, I was trying to wait for a break. So I know I'm just joining the party, but we have 11 minutes left. And so what have we been able to fill? I don't know if you guys are filling out the sheet.
We're filling it out.
Okay. And what's been, I definitely want to make sure that we get to the meat today because we're running out of time, right? And I'm going to have to report on these things on Friday. Well, actually, we don't have a board meeting on Friday, thank God, next week. But we're definitely looking at trying to wrap this up in terms of like the engagement pieces and those 3 time frames. What do we need to do now? What do we need to do after the plan comes out? What do we need to do after school starts? So
what we've been starting to do, Julian, I'll share my screen real quick. We are putting information into the workbook, into the playbook. So we started to populate the summary of the topic, and we used the parent, guardian, and family engagement regulations, the policy, to pull some language. We also added in criteria for success. I think the area that we're talking about right now is around division guidance and school building action items. It sounds like what I heard Krishna and Eden out of that conversation is that Krishna is working on some consistent communication expectations to be shared with schools. It actually sounds like it may be really beneficial for this team to put together a professional development that could be delivered by principals or by that liaison at the school level, but that there is a consistent professional development that can be shared across all of the teachers. And I think your team kind of controlling what is in that professional development and what materials are associated with it, everything else might be something, okay. So that would be a supporting doc that you would put together. And I'll put it here as, well, I guess I already put it, professional development and materials. So then the division guidance would be to lead. So, or actually the school building action item would be to lead before the start of school. Lead with teachers to educate. And what else would that be for? And empower.
I'm gonna leave the room for a second. It looks like Dr. Hutchins is trying to join in. I don't know if
Okay.
Okay. Testify, are you still hanging out there? I keep admitting you. I don't know what is going on.
I don't know. I was just waiting. Just I couldn't connect. Just wait. I didn't touch anything. It says on the screen, the meeting host will let you in.
And I keep hitting yes. I don't know what's going. I really don't know why it's doing that. I'm gonna do it again.
Okay.
I'm
And I check my internet
reset.
speed. Oh. Okay.
So did you get anything? Are you getting anything?
Let me open a different. I don't see any message at all.
I don't know what's going on, to be honest with you, because I keep hitting yes, and that's why I keep coming out.
And
Why?
others like Kurt or other participating like Krishna, can they connect me or?
No, because they're not the host. And I mean, I've let you in. I don't know why it's not doing that.
Exactly. It worked last week. Even I attended the first session, the general session. And
Hold on.
break when it,
I'm gonna put you back in the waiting room and see if there's anything. Okay. I keep putting you in and it's just not working. I have no idea. There's nothing I can do about it. I just don't know how to fix it. I'm gonna put you in another room and see if maybe that works.
okay, let's try that. Okay, thank you. When I checked my internet speed, it's like 21 megabits per second, very fast. So I restarted the machine just to clear.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why.
Okay.
And we're almost, I mean, we're gonna be coming back together in like 6 minutes. So if you wanna just hang tight, I don't know how to fix it. I'm not a breakout room expert, so.
Okay.
Why
So
you're
we'll
still
be
hanging out there.
we'll be meeting again for the general one.
Yeah, at 10:50. Yep.
Okay. I'll
Okay.
wait for that.
Sorry
Okay,
about that. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Plans, you have to identify a specific liaison within your building. I don't know if we need to elaborate a little bit here on to coordinate support
Yeah.
and professional development with teachers. That's a lot for one person. Like you're thinking about like what Eden said with, the 4,000 students that, so maybe there's a team or maybe there's different, so I'm
Yeah,
just
create
wondering
a team.
Yeah.
But I think then if you're asking schools to create a team around family and community engagement, I think what you would need to do is give them guidance as to what and how to do that. So, and don't sign up for stuff in this document that you're not going to be able to do before the start of school too. So if you want principals to create a team for family and community engagement, we need to provide them development and tools so that they are able to, and Eden, that's a great question. I think, were you a part of the whole group session earlier today?
I was, yeah.
Yeah, so there's no additional funding. So there might be ways to provide funds for teams like this, but right now, is there a family and community engagement team at your school?
Me.
It's you.
and even like what I've been able to do is limited. You know, I'm just again just doing it because I have a desire to make sure families are engaged. But I'm just saying, if we're giving teachers additional roles, you're not going to find too many, I don't think, that are going to want to do it without being paid.
So one thing that I learned is that we actually are doing a lot of duplication because we're not all aware what the other one is doing. So for example, we had a system to deliver food for children with disability. Social workers were using other people when we had a system already in ACPS, but nobody knew, right? So I agree with you 100%. If we can actually put a list of not only resources, but who do you contact? Just sort of the way, right? So that will help us to use multipliers, which teachers are multipliers as well as community. So you have a family engagement and a community level engagement. So you actually can help families both ways.
So is that a tool set, Christian? I love that idea. So what I'm hearing from you is like you're putting together a list of here's the what, which is the tool set of different ways to engage families, and the how, here's some expectations on really great practices to do this. And so once you have those two sets of tools, when you share that out with the team, I think what I'm hearing is it's not necessarily about teachers taking on additional responsibilities. This is assistance to teachers as they are already engaging with families. Here's an additional set of tools to support you as you are engaging with students and families. And so I think when I think about a small group, I think the message coming from from like the division level to all of, Eden, how many teachers are there in your school?
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Hundreds, right? So instead of coming from an outsider spraying to all 100, it would be the idea that it would come from the family and community engagement or school and community relations department to a group of 5 or 10 who would then help to build the message out across the rest of the teachers.
Yeah, I think it might be helpful to create steps, right? So what are the steps that when you're working at community level family engagement, you start with identify what family resources are needed, right? Who is high tech, who is medium, who is really at the bottom, who doesn't know? And then communication, how are you going to be consistent to, communicate with families, and defining what is a one-way and two-way communication. So phone calls is a two-way, video chats, grassroots, right? Audio, messaging. But then you connect families, you create resource lists, and you share it, right? So all those things have to exist in order for that family engagement to, family and community engagement to exist. And again, like what I put on the chat box, right? When you look at all that stuff, that it goes with high impact family and community engagement, you see that now we have to add the outreach piece, which is very important because we're in different times. And it has to be culturally collaborative and competent, and really focus on the families that we are targeting. So and that's where the hotline, I hate that hotline, the hotline name, because it sounds like when you have problems with like an item, the parent information line.
So I'm gonna bring us back to the main room because it's already 10:52, and so we can talk about next steps. Okay. Everyone.
Keep going, Julia. I thought we had 40 seconds left.
Yeah.
I gave you 2 extra minutes.
Just joking.
Nope. Look at us.
So
That's okay. Kurt was talking. We didn't want to listen to him anymore anyway.
Oh, good. Okay. I'm glad I saved today. So, I know there's been a lot of rich discussion, but I feel like there's so much more that we still need to do. Does everyone think there's some utility in sort of meeting offline and continuing the discussion? Because I don't want to give you another thing to do, but I think there's a lot that needs to be done. I know with the hotline, we need to come up with a plan, and we need to have something that I can push forward and talk to HR about and technology about and so on and so forth.
I think for the hotline, Julia, I think our group has a pretty good plan, kind of a skeleton in place that could be used. Tanika, you and I might be able to meet. No offense, Janet and John, but I think that you guys have given your opinions, and I think we're on the same page. Tanika, you and I, Julia, can meet and just explain the proposal that I think is very important to put into place in terms of what we're going to need staffing and phone wise. There's two major costs there, so I think we can do that.
Okay, sounds good. What about, I know that Delana and Helen, you guys have a lot, he'd already put a lot of the stuff in there. You feel like I'm sorry I wasn't able to join your group. I was having trying to let Testify in, poor thing, and now he's disappeared altogether. I don't understand. So he was here and now he's gone. So not sure if you feel like you're in a good place to sort of solidify those things, or do you guys feel like you need to continue working?
I think we need, Melinda, Delana, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we need to continue working. I think we began a discussion, but we really only got to the virtual model, and we need to make sure that we've covered both. You can't just do one, we have to roll into both. And we started a Google Doc with all the content that's needed. I think our biggest concern is that majority of our content we can deliver, but what majority of our content is dependent on others giving us the information in advance so that we can then hone it and transfer it. And it's not just a case of posting their content, but actually making it accessible into graphics, into infographics. But we're going to need that content well before we're expected to deliver. And that was one of our things. There's a lot of deliverables. I'm going to put you on the Google Doc, Julia.
Okay. So I guess the question is, Helen, does it make sense at this point to start attaching some deadline dates? Like if we're going to create this infographic, we need the information by August 1st. If we're going to create this, we need it by this date. Because I think we need to start giving people some idea of, if you want us to support you with these documents and these visuals, we have to have them solidified by this time. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. And so I think, to me, that's probably the next best step is for you to start attaching some dates.
Yes. I think the step actually is one step in between, and that is that maybe you, me, and Delana, and Melinda are welcome to join if you want to. You're okay. You've added a lot already to us, the three of us should probably meet to finalize exactly what our deliverables are.
Okay.
Because a lot of it is, if you're delivering information around, say, I'm just going to throw out finance because it's a neutral one, really. But if you're delivering information about finance, and you're going to then post that into a video, into an infographic, you need that information at the same time. So it's almost like, really, once you drop that, then we can begin our work. We're the kind of knock-on domino effects, but we need that information potentially at least a week in advance.
Well, that works. So why don't you just find a time for the three of us that works? Same thing with Kurt and Tanika. If you want to find a time for the three of us that works to sort of get that locked down. I'm just laughing because with the wonderful background that Delana has created for us, she looks like the Grand Poobah. Like she has.
Oh, that's because I have an electric blanket on because I'm freezing.
I know, but it's just so funny, like the way it looks is hysterical.
It also, look at that. If I do this.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like moving, and so it's so funny. Anyway, I couldn't help myself.
This morning, I looked like some monster with my hair, but it wouldn't cut it out. I was like, I can't tie my hair back like yours. I'm going to use it, Julia.
Yeah.
And look
anyway,
at my hair.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, John.
That's Delana's new name. So the last one is the engagement group. Where do you think we need to go next, or what can we start to sort of build that out? Because I think I know there was a lot of rich discussion, and I know that we haven't really had a lot of time to talk about that in our previous meetings, so I get that that's sort of why we're probably a little more not as solid with that at this point. So what do you guys want to do? What do you need next to get that sort of squared away? Because I really want to make sure that we're attaching, as I heard some of your conversation around costs or resources that are needed. Those are the things that concern me the most, is like, if we're going to need things, we need to figure out what those things are. And so I need you guys to sort of like pull together that, and then and I'm happy to participate in another offline conversation with you guys, just like I am with the other teams, but I want to kind of hear from you. Where do you think we need to go next?
For costs for the hotline and that area, I'm
talking about the engagement group. I think we're,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We got our plan. The engagement group, I wanted to hear from them about where do we think we need that squared away. Anyone? Krishna, I know you're not usually quiet. Why? She's being quiet now. It's scaring me.
No, I'm sorry. I'm actually trying to multitask here and not working. So the cost will depend on the amount of information we have to do, and also it have to be collaborative with Helen's group, with Tanika, because she does the school engagement, in order for us to put a price tag. So what do we prioritize? What do we have? So we have to identify what we have right now. How can we leverage those resources and move stuff around, and then move forward? So starting from that.
I think the materials and visuals, that's sort of like in that group, right? But I'm thinking about, what do you need for the engagement pieces, like resources, people, bodies, phones, whatever. What are you going to need to sort of make sure that our families are engaged? I know the translations and all those pieces are going to be a critical piece, but that'll sort of fall more in the materials and visual side. There are some translation needs on the engagement side, then definitely you want to consider those as well. But I think locking down what you need first, and then saying, what is it that we need in terms of cost and resources for that? So I think what I'm asking is, what do you need to do next to sort of get to the point?
It will be identify how many professional development, how much the professional development piece will, what's the goal, what is the short term and long term, and then you can pretty much start going from there. That's the most important piece.
So can you guys meet offline as well, and sort of continue to flesh that out, and so we can get that going? And Shanna, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, with our team, like, it's difficult because I think we need, for example, Tanika's feedback, because what we were talking about from a larger engagement component is really the impact for the schools, the individual school buildings and staff, and that in order for us to say these are the things that you need to engage, Sema made the good point of, like, then we have to provide them the professional development, the resources and the materials to be able to do that. And so coming up with developing, I know we do have some trainings already, but like really developing it for in the reality of COVID, what that looks like. How do you support your teachers and your staff, and creating a team, and how do you go about it, and what tools do you use? Like all of that we would have to develop, and then train the schools before the first day. So I don't think that that's something that our team alone can do. It really our group. It really requires feedback from those that are really the deliverable, those delivering that information.
Yeah, and the same thing with the parent info line. So as we pull 3 staff that were earmarked to fill a role when communicating with families, working on that engagement piece, they're getting pulled, into the connecting resources kind of person. Then we have to think in a larger scale, what does that mean when we go and we talk about engagement, because we're pulling them right to a completely different role. What they're doing will be connecting, is part of it.
So let me just maybe to make you feel a little more comfortable. So nothing that we're talking about today is written in stone, right? We're just planning. And so That's why I said from the very beginning, cost and feasibility are going to play a great deal into it. So right now, I don't want you to get stuck in what might not work or people being pulled in that direction or what is it that we need to support our families? And then we have to think about, can we do it? Can we afford it? And is it feasible for our team to get it done? But in your world, what is it that we want to do to make sure that our families feel comfortable, that they feel safe if they have to come back into the building because of the messaging that we're putting out, that we're giving information on a regular basis? I think it's really important for you guys to think about, the hotline is one, like I said before, it's a tool. It's just a tool, but we need one group to sort of figure out what that looks like because there's so many logistics. But the engagement piece is way beyond that. So there's so many other pieces, and some of the things that the materials and so on that we'll be developing will of course support that. So, I know it's hard to sort of separate the three, but there's no way that we can, if you try to plan with the cast of thousands, you don't really get anywhere, right? So it's important that we sort of like keep all of our hats on at the same time, thinking about just focusing on the one area that's going to support the rest of the team. So I know it's hard to separate them, but I need everybody to sort of like think about one focal point. What do we need to do to engage our families? What do we need to do to have a hotline? What do we need to do to have the materials that we need? So 3 separate groups thinking about that and then coming back together. I mean, ideally, it would be wonderful if we could be on Wednesday. I know everybody's really busy between now and Wednesday, but ideally it would be great if we could sort of get back together on Wednesday and say, here's what we got. But that may not be feasible for you guys to meet between now and then.
Or as I was saying, it requires pulling in. I don't feel comfortable making, and unless you tell us to do differently, but like really developing professional development for school team rollout without Tanika having a voice on that. So then it's requiring her to also be a part of that group. And so really capacity is beyond even us.
Right, but I think what I'm trying to say is that you're coming up with what we need, and then we're going to share it back out with each other. The same thing with the hotline folks. We're going to come back and say, what do you guys think? Here's what we're thinking about. Here's what we're going to do. Helen and Delana and Melinda, they've come up with a list. Do we really need all these pieces? Maybe not. Okay. They're saying, let's meet the 3 of us to sort of pare it down and say, what could we really get done in this short amount of time, and then bring it back to the group. So it's not that we're saying everyone's working separately in silos. It's more just like, let's work separately to put a plan together that we bring back to the group to say, is this what we want to do? So, I just need everybody sort of like separate thinking for a moment and then collective thinking when we come back together. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we are at 11:04, and I want to respect everybody's time because I know everybody has lots of things to do, and trying to get back together before Wednesday if possible. If you can't make it, if you cannot get back together before Wednesday, I completely understand. But it will be helpful to our conversation, I think, if we could sort of bring some plans back together, and then we could sort of think together about what we want to do moving forward. There's a lot to do between now and then. Sima had a question? Oh, she's leaving. Okay.
I'm waving.
And saying goodbye. Okay. So thank you all. I'm going to save this chat, and we will talk again on Wednesday. If you want to talk to me before that, if you want me to participate in the meeting before that, if I'm able to participate, I'm absolutely happy to do so. If not, just let me know. Maybe if I'm not able to participate, send me some questions that you may want my thinking about, and I can send you that for your meetings. Sound good?
Hey, Eden, Shanna, and Krishna, I have additional thought for your group. If you want to stay on for just a minute, I'll talk to you if you want. If you have just a minute.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Everyone.
Everyone.
And Julia, you can certainly stay on if you want. I just had an additional thought.
Okay.
Hey, for engagement like the professional development, I think we have a tendency to dig in deep, and I get that and want to know what Tanika has, but I think we're looking at pulling back just one level at this point, because we're just trying to get, I think what Julia is trying to do, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Julia, is to get an overall kind of estimation of what we think we're going to need to put into place. Whether if it's professional development, yeah, you're going to have to indicate what you think based on your prior experience that could potentially look like. It's not going to obviously be set in the stone, but what what is that cost and what does that look like over the next, I don't know, months in terms of that plan? That's going to be tough to do, but you're going to have to we'll kind of have to think about that. And I also think there are alignments to whatever we decide on the engagement piece. We know we're going to need more translators, interpreters, all that too. You know, how do you kind of work that into an estimation? We're not digging in deep at this point. There's no way, because we don't even know the plan. But at least we can have some overall viewpoint. For the hotline, we don't know all the pieces, but we're trying to get at least a base skeleton of what it could look like and potential cost barriers. Not saying, oh, I know it's going to be $20 a month for this. No, $20 a person. We're not dealing with that. I just think we're trying to get a skeleton of sorts. Does that help at all? And your guys' is tough because yours filters in to those other two areas, kind of branches into those other two areas. So you're kind of looking at an overview. I don't know if that helped or not, or if that made it even more confusing.
Well, I think maybe, Kurt, and just to sort of elaborate a little bit too, is I think what you have to think about is that the hotline is one of your tools, right, for engagement. That's going to be one of the pieces that you have. You just have you have another little group that's talking about how it's going to actually work. It's not like, you know, we're separating you guys, you know what I mean? I think it's like, there's no way we could have a hotline discussion and everything else at the same time. We have to sort of think about that in a whole different way. And then with the engagement piece, what are all the other ways that we need to engage? The liaisons, how often, how are we going to do that? Community groups, our partners. So it's like everything that you do every single day, right? During the school year, it's not anything different, but because we can't do in-person engagement, how are we going to translate that into sort of the virtual engagement that's still going to be meaningful for families and so they do still feel connected to us? So I think, like, put your connection hat on, right? How do we connect with families in this crazy virtual environment where they feel that they have a voice and they feel like they're connected to us, right? That they're engaged, right? So I think if you kind of put that hat on and make a listing of all the things that you're already doing, but we just can't do them in person, that will sort of help you pare it down, because you've already been doing a lot of it anyway. But then because of the situation right now and how things are going to look different, whether they're hybrid or virtual, the virtual in the past, right? Everyone's getting stuck with the virtual in the spring. The virtual in the spring was, we have to close schools and we don't know what the heck we're doing, right? That's what the spring looked like. And now we're being told that we can't grade kids and we can't do in-person instruction, you know, synchronous instruction. Okay, great. That was tough. So what we're trying to do is sort of change that narrative too to families that even if we're virtual or hybrid, that their kids are actually going to learn something and that they're going to get graded and that it counts and it's meaningful. And so that should be sort of that should be the messaging in your mind. Like, how are we going to make sure that families feel like what we're giving them is meaningful and that their kids are getting what they need to learn, right? And that they're healthy and that they're safe. If they have to come to our buildings, that we've thought about everything. If they're not coming to our buildings, how are we connecting with them? How are we worried about their social emotional learning? All those other pieces. So put that hat on, right? And that might help you sort of pare it down, and how we're going to do that really well in a virtual way. Because even if we are a hybrid plan, right? Which I highly doubt, but even if we were, we still can't have community meetings. We still can't have, we can't do all that stuff. So we still have to think about engagement in a virtual way, because the only thing that'll be happening at the schools is coming in to learn, because they're not even going to go to the cafeteria to eat. You know what I mean? It's like that's why I said, I think for us, we can put our plan together and it'll work for either thing, because we're really going to engage the same exact way, whether we did a hybrid or virtual model. So does that help?
And you guys have already put that into place so much over the last couple of months, Krishna.
Exactly.
You know, you have this plan in place, you know, between virtual parent coffees, you know, all these different kind of ways that you're engaging with parents and families. I take back parents, families, that I think you could just work off that in terms of what's coming up.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is, like, what did you not get to do because we had to rush, you know, so much that we didn't get to do it well? And then the other thing is, like, how often are you gonna, so the what are you going to do and how often are the things that you should be sort of focused on? And then what do you need for the rest of the team to make that work, right? So.
Can I ask, though, when you talk about, what we're doing currently as our office and what we're doing, what our team will need to support, I think we fed a lot off of what Eden's commentary was around what, as a teacher and trying really in the International Academy to reach out to families that are still so, like, they don't know how to navigate online learning. They don't know how to get on and listen to the various information that we're putting out online. And so she was talking about how overwhelming that is. And so that's when we really talked about like helping schools to understand how to do this, a systemic approach. It's not just our office doing it. I think it's very easy to come up with the things that our office can do, but systemically, that's a little more difficult to think about how we're engaging the entire division in a process and providing the tools and resources and training that they need to be able to do it.
But I think this is why I was saying before, it's about what's feasible, right? What's feasible. So not only our team, but if we are going to have schools engage, which we do have to have schools engage, what can we give them? Whether it's a playbook, whether it's tricks and tips, whatever it is that we need to tell them that we need from them. They're expecting us to come up with that plan. The only thing the schools are worried about right now is learning, teaching and learning. That's it. Like they have nothing. I don't think they have the bandwidth to think about anything else. So they're relying on us to say, here's how you can continue to engage your families, even in this crazy virtual environment. And so we need to come up with that. And then of course we can always go to them and say, does this work? Do you think that you can actually do this, right? But I think we know what they're capable of doing right now because of the situation, right? So it's like, we got to rely on our expertise, come up with a plan, and then pitch it. But something that we think is going to work.
I just want to clarify, make sure. So I'm just going to put this as an example. If I look at this, right, this is high impact. This is family engagement, right? That's what is, if we look at this, right, and say, okay, this is what we want teachers to be able to build personal relationships through virtual or phone, and how do we actually develop professional development? How do we help them to understand what kind of data families want or need for being able to support their children? I mean, if we look at this and we start from this, is this something that, is this what we're talking about here?
Yeah, like are we abandoning our concept that it has to be culturally accommodated, that it has to be two-way, that it has to be, instructional, and or are we just like basics, so I guess because someone wanted us to start with the definition of what we were talking about, so we really use that high quality definition that we have always embraced. And so if we are, then there's a lot more than just what's feasible.
So I think if I miscommunicated anything, I never ever while I'm in this job want you to abandon any of those things. Let me be clear about that. So don't ever think that I want you to abandon culturally competent, any of the things that you just mentioned. I think when I say feasible is that if we, let's say, I don't know, let's say you came up and said, every 2 weeks, we're going to have a chat in Amharic, right? When I say, is that feasible? Okay, do we have the bandwidth to do that, right? That's what I mean. But it doesn't mean that we should abandon doing those things. It's about how often, that's why I said how often, how much resources do we need, how much is it going to cost, those things. But you should be thinking about what it is that you want to do without any barriers. I don't want you to think with barriers. Barriers have to be out the window at this point. But when I say feasible, you can't say, oh, we're going to have a chat in Amharic every day. We just know that that's not feasible. You know what I mean? Like that would be pie in the sky. That would be talking to families on a regular basis. But if we had the hotline, that sort of like is a way for families to do this every day. Does that make sense?
Yeah. If I could just say something, I don't want to hold us up too long. It's such a good conversation. But going back off of what Shauna said, I think that's where the idea of equipping other staff to do what this office is doing is so important, because the reality is, my daughter is saying hi and getting water. The reality is you guys have a small office and you guys are stretched so thin. And I think in terms of the feasibility, it's not, and when we talk about training, it's not something that has to be done before we start school September 8th. It could be October or November, but sometime really equipping teachers who are on the front line. And that would help us too with that idea of ongoing continuous communication, because like you said, we're not going to be able as this department to do those bi-weekly or monthly, even in some cases, chats to target all of the populations, but the teachers are going to have to continuously be contacting families. So equipping them that they're able to do it. But one thing that I think is important to think about as we leave this conversation, based on what we discussed previously, it was a little bit confusing because on one of the things, the school building action items, it talks about this idea of creating a liaison team in the building to coordinate support and professional development. And I think something like that entails a little bit more responsibility, which in turn could require more stipend. I know we're so tight right now, but I think that's something different, right? And requires more of teachers or staff in comparison to the third thing that we listed, which is leading professional development so that teachers or staff are educated and empowered to connect with families on an ongoing basis throughout the year, which in that case, I don't think it's more than what teachers are already asked to do. We're expected to communicate with families, but it's just equipping them to do it better, to do it in these circumstances that we're in now. Whereas the first one is a little bit different. That's looking at specific groups within schools, and that's essentially when we talk about developing training and coordinating, that's additional responsibilities, which I think requires more thought process. So when it comes to what we're asking schools to do based on what we outlined here in the playbook, I think we need to think through number 1 and number 3. And like you said, what's feasible.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, because I've got to run. And like you said, it's a good conversation, but I think you guys are getting stuck way too much in the weeds. Think about what you want, and then we figure out if we can afford it and if we can do it. But I don't want you to have a barrier-minded thinking, okay? We want to make sure we engage with families. That's it. That's it, right? And so you guys can meet again, start looking at that playbook, that what I gave you earlier, start plugging that in, right? Because we are going to have, that's going to be sort of our end product, right? So look at those pieces. That might help you to pare it down. And the last thing that I'll say too is that this is actually a great opportunity for us to show schools how they can be supporting our work, right? It's sort of getting them involved, because sometimes they don't understand how they can support our work. Sort of to what Eden was saying, this should be an ongoing thing. We should be begging people to help us engage families, right? But maybe if we give them sort of these bite-sized, chewable things in the meantime, right, while we're in this virtual environment, then maybe we can expand it later. So think about it from that standpoint too. We don't want to overwhelm them, but give them some bite-sized things that they could do to support our work. So moving forward, they can go, oh, wow, that really worked. And then they might get the engagement piece. So that's always our challenge. So put that thinking on, and then we'll keep talking. And then hopefully you guys will have some more solid thinking for Wednesday when we get back together. That work? Yes? Good.
Are we able to use this, whoever this is, to stay on and communicate for a second? Or Julia, do you need us to jump off?
I'm the host, so once I jump off, I think it's gonna.
Oh, okay. So real quick, can I just ask the team, tomorrow I am like booked solid. So when's your availability? Like now I could send out a Zoom, or?
Hey, Julia, you can make Shanna the host and she can stay on.
Oh, okay, let me see.
I think it's down, you should see at the bottom or somewhere that assigns someone else the host. I thought we could do that.
Yep.
Maybe not.
Yep, I just changed you as the host. Okay.
There you go.
You know,
Okay.
I'm Zoom illiterate at this point. I'm still learning. Thank you. The breakout rooms was a big deal for me today. You don't even know.
That was good.
That's fine. I couldn't get him in. I kept admitting him. Anyway, thank you guys.